Joining me now to discuss the PBO report and to share the findings of his own debt report is Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano. Franco, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to dive right into this debt and figure out if we have a solution here with a new wealth tax.
Well, hey, thank you so much for having me on, and you got my name perfectly. That was amazing.
Okay, this is my trips to Italy that helped me out there. So there we go. Okay, so before we talk about this new proposal of a wealth tax, is there another jurisdiction in the world that has something similar, that does actually have a wealth tax? What is it, and where else do we see something like this?
Well, we should learn from experiences from other countries, and we've seen more than a handful of countries try a wealth tax and then abandon a wealth tax. And the reason is because it's very bad policy. I mean, we can get into the nuts and bolts, but it's very costly, it's very complex, and wealth taxes can come with very damaging economic consequences. And, right now, as we think about how to emerge from this COVID-19 downturn, the last thing that politicians in Ottawa should be thinking about are higher taxes, especially these type of damaging taxes such as a wealth tax.
Okay, well, is there another jurisdiction in the world that still, that implemented a wealth tax and still has it? I know you said many have abandoned it. Is anybody still latching on?
Well, I mean, there's talks around the world of introducing a wealth tax. I think the jurisdiction that we can learn from the most is from France, right? So let's look at the economic consequences that occurred in France. Well, they had a wealth tax, they had high taxes, and what happened is that they chased away thousands of residents. They chased away billions of dollars in assets. I mean, billions and billions of dollars in assets, and that's why eventually they said goodbye to their wealth tax. And really, I think if we look at the international response and the international experience, we should learn to say no to a wealth tax in Canada.
Okay, but even though I do hear rumblings south of the border that they're considering a wealth tax, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe my news is out of date. So then I wonder if the world's biggest economy is even considering a wealth tax. Then is this the direction that maybe the rest of the world is or ought to be headed?
Well, respectfully, I mean, if the U.S. wants to put in bad policies that are going to damage their taxpayers, that are going to damage their economy, we should let them, right? Let the United States raise taxes if that's what the U.S. wants to do. And quite frankly, we should be in Canada encouraging investment, encouraging talent to set up shop here if other countries want to move in the wrong direction.
Okay, so let's talk about this private member's motion, M68. So it was introduced by a Liberal MP, which is the governing party federally. What were some of your concerns with this introduction? I know we kind of scratched a little bit of the surface here, but tell me a little bit more in depth.
Well, we really see this as a silly political posturing, right? We talked about some of the economic damages and consequences that can happen from a wealth tax, but not only would this harm the economy, I mean, it would even put a dent into the massive debt tab that we're facing, right? The federal government is more than $1 trillion in debt. And really, that's the reason why you have politicians in Ottawa who are musing about these new types of taxes, about these tax hikes, because you have members of parliament that are really tripping over themselves, trying to figure out how they're going to pay this $1 trillion debt tab. And I think as average Canadians, me and you, I think what we need to be honest with ourselves here. And if these politicians don't actually figure out a way to cut back on spending, it's going to be average taxpayers that end up getting clobbered.
Yes, and I think that's always the concern when we have high spending. We have 30 seconds before we go to commercial, but just we'll delve into the nuts and bolts in a moment. But in the 30 seconds, the parliamentary budget officer, what was his initial take to this M68?
Well, he found that this could generate about $60 billion in government revenue, but really that's a $60 billion hit to taxpayers over 5 years to our private sector economy. And let's remember, I mean, Trudeau's deficit spending is so high that he would burn through that cash in about a month.
Okay.
So who's going to be picking up the tab the other 11 months?